Okay, welcome everybody to a new season of Dine and Learn. The way it's going to be, this schedule is Rabbi Mendelson is doing July, and I'm going to be doing August, but I'm substituting for him tonight, and someone's going to substitute for me one night in August when I'm not around. But Yisrael Shem, it should be a wonderful summer full of learning Torah. Tonight's shiur is sponsored by the Newman family, Lilu Nishmas Shmilu's mother, Malka Yehudis Bas, Rabbi Aaron Tzvi Halevi, Neshama should have an Aliyah. I also just want to mention and add the Zechus of our Torah should be for cousin through marriage of mine who was Nifteris this past weekend under terrible circumstances in a fire. Dine Bas Sheva Bas Dov Ber Azriel. Neshama should have an Aliyah. So I thought we would talk about, as we all know, there's been a war going on in Eretz Israel for too long, 8 months, 9 months, and the kids who are the same age as our kids are fighting, and it's kind of insane to think about that. So not long after October 7th, one of the Rebbeim in one of the gap year programs in Eretz Israel reached out to me. He was called in for Miluim to do in the reserves to serve, and he asked me this question, not halachos, but for my thoughts on it, and that just got me started, and I've been thinking about these issues since then. So tonight we'll discuss one or two shilos. The question he asked me is, what Torah should he learn, or should any soldier learn, while serving in the battle? In battle. So obviously, a soldier's primary duty is his military mission, and not only his life depends on it, but also those of others around him all depend on him. But from what the soldiers tell me, the current and past soldiers, what they tell me is that there's almost always some time to learn Torah. I'm not talking about special forces soldiers, different bria. I know my parents' rabbi, I remember when I was there for Shabbos, he once said he called up his cousin, managed to get his cousin who was in special forces in Eretz Yisrael on the phone, and he said, "I'm davening for you." And his cousin said, "Thank you, because I'm not able to daven myself." Could you imagine not even having time to say a tiny little tefillah for days at a time? But normal soldiers usually have a few minutes. So the question is, if you only have a few minutes to learn Torah, what should you learn? Rav Nachum Rabinovich, who for many years was a Rosh Yeshiva, he was an American, a Canadian, but he was Rosh Yeshiva and a Hezbollah Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. So he was asked about soldiers. Soldiers asked him, are we allowed to attend entertainment that they have for the soldiers in which there are female singers? So he starts off the tshuva saying, obviously you Bnei Yeshiva are not going to go, because Bnei Yeshiva, when they have a few minutes of free time, they spend it learning Torah. Your question is, other soldiers who are going, should you object to them going or not? But a Ben Yeshiva, a Ben Torah in the army should be learning. Rav Shlomo Goren was the chief rabbi of the IDF before he became the chief rabbi of Eretz Yisrael. So he points out that the Gemara Megillah, at the very beginning of Megillah, Gimel Amud Aleph, so Malach comes to Yeshua and criticizes him for the Bittul Torah. This is when Yeshua was amassed, ready to attack Yericho. He was he was just about to start the war to conquer Eretz Yisrael, and he was criticized for not learning Torah, and that he did learn Torah. And in fact, the whole pasuk, v'hagisa bo yomam v'layla, the chiyuv to learn Torah day and night, that we know is from Yeshua as he was conquering Eretz Yisrael. Even a soldier should be learning Torah when he can. So the Gemara in Kiddushin Lamed Amud Aleph says that a person should split his time of learning into three: 1/3 for Tanakh, 1/3 for Mishnah, and 1/3 for Gemara. And that's how the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch paskin. But Tosfos, Rabbeinu Tam says, yeah, but Talmud Bavli has Psukim in it, has Mishnah in it, has Gemara in it. You learn Gemara, you learn Talmud Bavli, you got it all. You don't have to learn any. Obviously, you have to know all of Torah, but you're Yotzei, you're Chiyuv for any given day just by learning Gemara. And that's how the Ramah paskins, and that's our Masorah. But the Shach there, he adds, you have to learn Halach L'Maisa, because you have to know how to act. Yeah, in theory, the Chiyuv of Talmud Torah, fine, I need the Tanakh and Mishnah and Gemara, and you can be Yotzei with Talmud Bavli, fine. But from the Chiyuv of a mitzvos, you have to learn how to do the mitzvos. So Halach L'Maisa, Mishnah Berurah, is very important. And this is all in addition to other requirements. Let's say Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum. We're all obligated to follow the Kriyas Torah and to prepare in advance for the Kriyas Torah by reviewing the Parsha twice and with Targum or with Rashi. And Musar, we all have to learn Musar. To some degree, we have to strengthen our emunah. And the whole prerequisite for the only way we can, the foundation of being able to be Mekayim Torah mitzvos and to learn Torah is if we have that emunah. You have to strengthen yourself. So that's in addition to learning Time Mekran, in addition to learning Musar and being Mechazik your emunah, you also have to learn Halachos L'Maisa and Talmud Bavli or Tanakh, Mishnah, and Gemara. So we talked about this on Shavuos. In 1881, the Chofetz Chaim published a sefer for soldiers in the Russian army called Machane Yisrael. They were drafted into the Tsarist army for 20, 30 years, 25 years. So he wrote a sefer for them, trying to be mechazik them and guide them, give them guidance. So when it comes to learning Torah, the Chofetz Chaim says they have to learn Halachos L'Maisa, and they have to know it cold, and they have to review it. So they should always be learning Chaye Adam, Shulchan Aruch, again and again, so that they know it cold. Or they can learn his sefer, Machane Yisrael, which also teaches them all the halachas that they need to know. Always be selling, right? You always got to be push product. So let's say someone can't learn. Not everybody has the background or not has the ability. So if you can't learn Halachos L'Maisa, you can't learn Machane Yisrael. So he says to learn Chumash. You should learn something. If you can't learn Chumash, learn Navi. I don't know why he thought Navi was easier than Chumash, but and if you can't do that, say Tehillim. You should have Torah in your life every single day. So even if you don't know how to learn, say Tehillim. And then said, but not everybody can say Tehillim. So says the Chofetz Chaim something brilliant, something beautiful. Anyone who can learn should be learning with someone else. Learn with Chavrusa, learn with a Chabura, with a few people. So that not only do you learn, and when you're with a Chabura, they strengthen you to learn more, you help them. And someone who doesn't know how to learn, he'll just sit there and listen. And you'll help him as well. So if you learn with a group, it also helps to have a group of friends who want to learn Torah. Those are the people you should be hanging out with anyway. So it accomplishes many different things. And he encouraged the Russian soldiers to learn with the Chavrusa or the Chabura. So that was what the Chofetz Chaim said. So Rabbi Avigdor, I've heard in the name of Rabbi Avigdor Nebensal, he said if you only have a few minutes to learn, you should do Shnai Mikra. A soldier, Dafka soldier. Why Dafka soldier? Because the Gemara in Brachos, Chesamad Beis says, Kolam Mashlim Parshiyosov Imat Tzibor, Marichin Lo Yomav Ushnosov. If you review the Parsha together with the Tzibor, your life will be lengthened. And what is the soldier worried about? The danger to his life. So he says it's a segula to survive the army and war, to be Maver Sedra. Okay, that's a bare minimum. What else should you learn? So I found this. Shlomo Aviner likes to text. He has a phone just for shilas, and people text him all the time, and he texts back, and then he gives that phone to someone in his yeshiva, who then types it out, and they circulate it, and then they publish. I have 6 volumes of his text message tshuvas, and there are more. I can't keep up. So I found this one. It's very interesting shilah that he was asked. He was asked, how do you keep, if you're in the army, how do you keep from sliding spiritually? You're not in the yeshiva environment anymore. You're in a totally different environment. So he said 5 things. 5 things. And they're generally appropriate for any of us in any time in our lives. Number 1, he says, learn Torah any free moment you have, whatever you want to learn. Whatever gets you excited, you should be learning that whenever you have a free moment. Number 1. Number 2, make sure to learn Musar. Mesilas Yesharim. Make sure it'll help you strengthen yourself. Number 2, this is amazing. This is amazing. I've never heard this from anyone. It says, write your own Sefer Musar with the inspirational and sayings that you find. You find throughout you reading anything. He says, collect those sayings and put them down, and you'll have your own Musar Sefer after that. After enough time, just keep a collection and review it, and you'll be inspired through that. Number 4, he says, make a cheshbon and nefesh every day. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? How do I improve? Right? It's one of the 7 habits of highly effective people or something like that. Keep track of where you are so you can constantly grow. And number 5, most important of all, what Rabbi Mendelsohn says all the time, make sure you have a chevra of Yirei Shamayim. Hang out with people who are frummer than you, even better, and you'll grow that way. So for Nogea, for us, number 1, he says, learn Torah masha libcha chafetz. It's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Ein adam lomed el makom shelibo chafetz. You're only going to learn if you're excited about it. So find something that excites you. And I talked to the editor of the Sefer, or I emailed him, and he emailed me back. He said, Rav Avi tells everybody, find whatever excites you in Torah, buy a pocket-sized edition of that, and keep it with you in your army backpack. So you have it wherever you go. So whenever you have a few minutes, you can take it out and you can learn. And you want to learn because it's exciting. So halach l'maisa, what did I tell this guy who asked me what he should learn? I said, ask your Rosh Yeshiva, right? So, I don't have any answers. Well, what it sounds to me, and Gabriel, you might appreciate this. So I reached out to one of the Rebbeim, I think one of your Rebbeim, Rabbi David Gottlieb, and I said, what do they say in your yeshiva? What do they tell the Talmidim who it's a heads of yeshiva? What do they tell? So he says that also there, they tell the boys, find a Masechta, find a Halacha Sefer that excites you, and that's what you should learn. Take with you everywhere, and that's what you learn. And you'll want to learn, and that'll strengthen you as well. So that's one halacha I thought we could talk about. Now I wanted to talk also about a wild thing. And it occurred to me. I said I've never seen anybody say it, but I think it should be halacha l'maisa. A crazy heter. It's a Gemara. It's a beferish Gemara. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah about soldiers eating treif food. Nobody tried this at home, but just hear me out. So there's a pasuk in Dvarim, Sefer Dvarim, when they get there with Israel, so they're not all going to be living right near the Mishkan. And so the pasuk says, "Ki yirchak mimcha hamakom asher yivcha Hashem Elokecha losum shemo sham." When you're going to live far away from Yerushalayim, from the Beis Hamikdash, so what do you do then? V'zavachta mibekarcha mitzoncha. Then you could shecht your animals. And this is a pasuk that teaches us about shchitas chulin, about how we shecht an animal, the chicken that we had tonight, or whatever. That's the pasuk. It says when they get to Eretz Yisrael and they don't live near Yerushalayim, near the Beis Hamikdash, so then you're allowed to shecht an animal. So the question the Gemara asks in Chulin, Yud Amud Aleph is, so what happened before then? Okay, that was the very end of 40 years in the Midbar. What about the time before that, between Matan Torah and that pasuk in Sefer Dvarim? It's Machlokas Tanoim. Let me make sure that I get this right. So why specifically if you don't live near Yerushalayim? Because if you live near Yerushalayim, you could always bring a korban shlamim. You bring the korban to the Beis Hamikdash, the korban shlamim, you get to eat it. You want to have beef? You want to have a barbecue? So you go to the Beis Hamikdash, you bring your korban, but if you live far away, you can't do that. So then you can shecht. So Rabbi Shmuel said in the Midbar, they were only allowed to eat kachim. That's the only meat that they ate. I mean, yeah, there's slav and the man or whatever, but if they wanted meat from the animals that they had, they could only bring the korban shlamim and they'd eat that. And that's why when they get to Eretz Yisrael, a special heter, if you don't live close enough to bring a korban shlamim, you could just have regular, you shecht it, have the shochet do it. Rabbi Kiva says no. And in Midbar, they didn't have to do shechita. They just smacked an animal. He said nechira, they stabbed an animal. Take out a bow and arrow, and you can eat that. Nowadays we can't do that. You have to shecht it. But in those days, in the Midbar, before shechita was commanded, they were allowed to just kill an animal. So to him, when they got there to Israel, there's a chumrah. If you want to have one of these animals, you have to shecht it. Before then, you just kill it in any way.
There's no official command of shechita?
No official shechita for kachim there was in the Midbar, but that's what Rabbi Shmuel says, because they were only allowed to eat kachim. Rabbi Kiva says no. If you wanted to have chulin, you could have it. Just kill it in any way you wanted.
They had meat. Why were they complaining for slaughs?
That's right. They did have animals. We know they had animals because they brought korbanos. And we know they had animals because it's also discussed when Bnei Gad and Reuven they didn't want to cross over. They wanted their cattle and their sheep to graze. They had animals, but they complained anyway. Okay, so we have this machloket. So then the Gemara asks, according to Rabbi Kiva, right? They were allowed to kill an animal in any way. Then they go to Eretz Yisrael. You're not allowed to do that anymore. You have to shecht it. So what happened? What happened to the meat in their freezers from before? Yesterday, we were allowed to have non-kosher meat, nevel and treva. But today, we're not allowed to. We have to shecht it. So what do we do with all this meat? That's the question in the Gemara. That itself is a whole sugya of, does that question even, is nogeya nowadays or not? So the Kohen talk about that. So the Gemara asks, wait, what is he talking about? One day it's asr, the next day it's mutter. So if it's during the first 7 years when they entered Eretz Yisrael, that's when they were battling to conquer Eretz Yisrael. And they were allowed to eat treif in those days. The Gemara calls it kadle de chazire. They were allowed to eat pig meat while they're conquering Eretz Yisrael, if they found any pig meat, any treif in it all. So what's the shaila? They had treif from the Midbar. They're allowed to eat treif now because they're in the middle of the war of conquering Eretz Yisrael. And if it's after, so when was it? So when does this question even come into play? So the Gemara answers, so either it's talking about after the 7 years. So how could they have meat from the midbar after 7 years? Not a beef jerky. I don't know. Maybe they made beef jerky in those days. I don't know how. Somehow they kept the meat fresh after 7 years. So, or it's during the years of the conquest, the first 7 years. Yeah, yesterday was also, today's mutter, but it's only mutter to eat the non-kosher food that we conquer, that we get from the Canaanim that we conquer. But if it's from us, you're not allowed to eat it. So,
why would that?
So hold on. No, this is actually going to be very important. I'm Halachos Rishonim. But did you hear what I'm saying? You hear what I'm saying? They were allowed to eat pig meat when they got into Eretz Yisrael. This is wild. This is mamish wild heter. It's Halachos Rambam and Ramban. Why?
When Mashiach comes, Jews will not eat. We have a pig. Is that true?
Pashas is not true. That the pig will become kosher, but some say it is true, and it's a whole another conversation. Mr. Shem, we could talk about it some other night. How could halacha and the Torah change when Mashiach comes? That itself is not allowed. So it could be that there will be a pig that will grow, the hooves, all the simanim of kashrus, and then it will be mutter. They think they sound. It's called Barbarossa. It's actually not a pig. It's from a different family of animals. But maybe. Put that aside. They were allowed to eat chazer when they went into Eretz Yisrael. Wild. Why should it be? What is the special heter that when they're conquering? And does it apply to soldiers nowadays? So the Rambam. Let me read to you this Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, Perches Halacha Aleph. Chalutzei tzava. The front lines of the battle of the soldiers, when they enter the borders of the non-Jewish country, and they conquer it, and they take the spoils from it, they're allowed to eat nevela, treifa, pig meat, and everything else. If they get hungry, and they don't have kosher food for that they want to eat, then they're allowed to eat it. Even wine that was used for avodah zarah, they're allowed to drink. It's a pella. And why is it a halacha l'maisa? If it was only applied in the times of Yoshua, it wouldn't be in the Mishnah Torah. This is halacha l'maisa. He's talking about any soldiers. Wild stuff. Wild. The Ramban on Parshas Vaschana says, well, it's wild. It's crazy. What? So first of all, the Ramban says, it isn't only for soldiers. Nowhere in the Gemara does it say soldiers. The Ramban says it's for anyone. When they conquered Eretz Yisrael, anyone who settled in Eretz Yisrael or was allowed to eat that food that they conquered, that was sitting there. Meaning, it was a kibush, it was a conquest. They got the land, they got the houses, they got the cattle and the sheep, and they got the food that was there. Once they finished that food, the heter no longer applied ever. It was a one-time event, one-time heter.
I was gonna. Is this like related to like Yefas Torah? Like.
Hold on. Hold your horses.
That's a juicy part waiting for it to start.
The Ramban also says, the Rambam says, if you're hungry and you can't find any other food, then you can eat the Ramban says, well, that applies to all of us. It's pikuach nefesh. If we don't have food to eat, we're all supposed to eat non-kosher food rather than chas v'shalom die. So the Ramban doesn't like this Rambam at all. According to the Ramban, it was a one-time event in history, never applies again. According to the Rambam, so there's a whole literature trying to explain the Rambam. The Kesef Mishnah says, I don't even know if you need this Kesef Mishnah. It should be a davar pashut. I think anyone can go for a full 24 hours without food. We do it a few times a year, or twice a year. But okay, soldiers need the strength. But 18 hours, 12 hours. Also, if you're preoccupied with other things, you don't even think about the food. You don't even realize. So fine, let's say 18 hours go by. You ran out of kosher food. It's not pikuach nefesh yet. And the Rambam says, if you're hungry and you have nothing else to eat, and you open up, you're in Gaza, you're occupying a house, you open up the fridge, and there's a rack of lamb, definitely not kosher, the Rambam would say, l'chora, you'd be allowed to eat it. So Maris Chayes and Chulin on this Gemara in Chulin, so he points out, And it's very, very clear. This Perek Shmini of Hilchos Malachim, the first halacha is about the food, and the rest of the Perek is about Yifas Toar. Says the Maras Chayes, it's the same thing. Lo dibra Torah l'keneged yetzer hara. It's only for soldiers in wartime when they have this craving. We don't want they won't be able to overcome it. So the Torah has a special heter for them. And no one, by the way, no one in their right mind would ever permit a Yifas Toar nowadays. For sure not. Even if you want to say halacha would permit it, which I don't think anyone would, certainly Israeli law would send them straight to jail. So that wouldn't be allowed. And the truth is, Israeli soldiers are not allowed to take items from occupied territory or homes. But I did see there was actually a question of whether they're allowed to use it when they're in the home. So let's say the Israeli soldiers are occupying a home and they need to recharge their phone, and their phone charger is just sitting there from the local residents. Are they allowed to use the phone chargers? They're not taking it away, they're just using it there. So it depends on how you interpret the regulations. Certainly not an expert, but I think the same might apply to the food. Can you use the food? It's going to waste anyway. So can you eat it? So I wanted to know, what do they tell Israeli soldiers nowadays? Are they allowed to eat it? So I saw Rav Shlomo Goren has an article about it. He says it tuts dadim, and he doesn't answer the question. I saw that Tzitz Eliezer has a tshuva about it. Doesn't answer the question. It says according to the Rambam, yes. According to the Ramban, no. So what do we pass on like? The Aruch HaShulchan. So the Aruch HaShulchan we have over there, that's Halacha L'Maaseh today. He also has a set of svarim called Aruch HaShulchan Ha'asid, of the halachas that apply in the future. Kabbanos Hilchos Malachim. So in his Hilchos Malachim, he quotes this Rambam and the Ramban. He says Chas v'Sholom to be meko, like the Rambam. Chas v'Sholom. So I bought it Mizrachi. This 1971 sefer for Israeli soldiers. Dine Tzava u'Milchama by Reb Shlomo Min Hahar. It was a big gadol in those days. The very, very end of the sefer. Let me read this to you. Nechnasa yechida l'shetach oyev. If a unit enters the territory of an enemy, if ein lachayalim dai ochel u'shatia, and the soldiers don't have enough food or drink, they're allowed to eat and drink from the food of the non-Jews. Halacha l'maisa.
Is that based on perhaps on the Holocaust journals where people never had to eat something in order to survive as well?
I think everyone would allow that. That's pikuach nefesh. He's just saying.
So this isn't pikuach nefesh. If they don't have what to eat, they have to continue. They have to.
Yeah, but how long do you wait to get reinforcements for people to come? I mean, look, a soldier has, what do they have? Military rations. They're not so great.
Right. Exactly.
And you open up the fridge, and there's great food. So, okay, that was 1971. So I looked through a few. I have a few of these types of svarim at home. I try to collect them. I didn't see anyone else talk about it until I found a sefer that was published just last year by Rav Yitzchak Shilat of the Yeshivat Hesder in Ma'aleh Adumim. It's called Medina Halacha V'Kavanot HaTorah. And he says, he passes like the Rambam. And he says, yeah, if your soldiers are there and they want that, they don't have food. They're not starving. They're starving. Everybody would agree. They just don't have food, and they open up the fridge or they open up the pantry, and they have these not kosher Doritos. Doritos in Israel are kosher, but whatever, Chametz on Pesach. Let's not go that far. I don't think anyone would go that far. That's an Issachar's, but yeah, he said Halacha l'maisa. I don't know if the IDF regulations allow that. I don't want anyone going to jail for that. But I found two poskim who would say Halacha l'maisa, that Israeli soldiers are allowed to eat non-kosher food in just that situation. Wild. Okay, so Mr. Shem, continue learning in future weeks.
Sure.